The death of a beloved artist often leaves fans and families grappling with grief, while record labels and estates face the complex task of deciding what to do with unreleased material. In the music industry, posthumous releases have become a double-edged sword. They can serve as a tribute to an artist's life and work, offering fans closure and new art to cherish, or they can devolve into exploitative cash grabs that dilute an artist's legacy with subpar or unfinished tracks. Too often, the latter occurs, as labels rush to capitalize on a deceased artist's fame, flooding the market with music that lacks the coherence or intent of the artist's vision. Examples like Juice WRLD's posthumous catalog have been criticized for feeling disjointed, and Pop Smoke's Faith album raised eyebrows with its heavy reliance on features that seem to step out of his style. Yet, amidst this landscape, one estate stands out as a beacon of integrity and respect: Mac Miller's. Since the tragic passing in 2018, Mac Miller's estate, primarily guided by his family, has handled his legacy with a rare combination of reverence, intentionality, and artist fidelity. Through careful curation, limited but meaningful releases, and a focus on honoring Mac Miller's creative vision, they have avoided staining his legacy, instead enhancing it in a way that sets a standard for how posthumous music should be managed. Mac Miller, born Malcolm James McCormick, was a multifaceted artist whose career evolved from the frat rap exuberance of his early days to the introspective, genre-blending mastery of his later work. His death at 26 from an accidental overdose left behind a rich discography and a trove of unreleased material, raising the question of how his estate would proceed. Unlike many artists whose death triggered a deluge of hastily assembled projects, Mac Miller's estate took a measured approach. Their first posthumous release, Circles, was not a collection of scraps, but a nearly completed album that Mac Miller had been crafting as a companion to his 2018 release, Swimming. This deliberate choice signaled their intent to prioritize quality and authenticity over quantity and profit. The estate's success in preserving Mac Miller's legacy can be attributed to three key strategies: respecting his artistic vision, maintaining a restrained release schedule, and engaging fans with transparency and purpose, each of which contrasts sharply with the missteps that have plagued other posthumous releases. At the heart of the estate's approach is a deep respect for what Mac Miller intended with his music. Circles was released on January 17, 2020, and it wasn't just a cobbled-together project from random demos, but a cohesive work that Mac Miller had been developing with producer John Bryan before his death. The album was conceived as a two-part concept, Swimming in Circles, with Swimming representing the first half and Circles the completion of the thematic loop. Bryan, who had worked closely with Mac Miller, took the delicate task of finishing the album, making minimal changes to preserve its essence. In an interview, John Bryan noted that he worked painfully slowly to ensure that the project reflected Mac Miller's vision as close as possible, a stark contrast to the heavy-handed studio interventions seen in other posthumous releases, such as Jimi Hendrix's post-death albums, where overdubs by session musicians sparkled fan backlash. The fidelity of Mac Miller's intent is evident in Circle's critical and commercial success. The album debuted at number 3 on a Billboard 200, earning 164,000 album equivalent units in its first week, and received widespread acclaim for its introspective lyrics and lush production. Tracks like Good News and Surf showcase Mac Miller's vulnerability and musical evolution, blending hip-hop and elements of jazz and rock in a way that feels organic and not forced. Critics praised it as a beautiful closer to his discography, a sentiment echoed by fans who saw it a fitting capstone rather than a cheap exploitation of his names. Compare this to Juice WRLD's Fighting Demons in 2021, where unfinished tracks and an overload of guest features left many feeling like it didn't fully represent the artist's potential, or Pop Smoke's Faith in 2021, which included collaborations like a dance pop track with Dua Lipa that seemed misaligned with his gritty drill aesthetic. Mac Miller's estate avoided such piss by releasing only what they knew he had poured his heart into, ensuring that his legacy remained untarnished. The release of Balloonerism in 2025, Mac's second posthumous album, further exemplifies this commitment. Recorded around 2014 during the prolific period that birthed Faces, Balloonerism was a project that had deemed significant, commissioning artwork and discussing its release prior to other albums like Good AM. The estate's decision to unveil it on January 17, 2025, exactly 5 years later after Circles and on Mac Miller's birthday, underscored their intentionality. Accompanied by a short film directed by Samuel Mason, the album was presented as a polished, official version of a work that had circulated unofficially online for years. The estate's statement emphasized that releasing Balloonerism honored Mac Miller's wishes, showcasing his musical talents and fearlessness as an artist. This careful framing contrasts with haphazard posthumous drops of artists like XXXTentacion, whose multiple post-death albums have been criticized as feeling more like label-driven profit schemes than tributes. Another cornerstone of the estate's success is restraint. In an industry where labels often flood the market with posthumous content, think Tupac Shakur's 7 posthumous albums in a decade after his 1996 death, or Juice WRLD's rapid succession of releases. Mac Miller's estate has opted for scarcity over saturation. In the 7 years since his passing, they have released just 2 full-length posthumous albums, Circles and Balloonerism. This limited output stands in sharp relief to the exploitative tendencies seen elsewhere. For instance, after Lil Peep's 2017 death, his estate and label released multiple projects, including Come Over When You're Sober Part 2 and Everybody's Everything, which, while successful, sparked debates about whether they truly aligned with his artistic direction or whether they were meet fan demand. By contrast, Mac Miller's estate has supplemented these albums with thoughtful non-album releases that enhance rather than dilute his catalogs. Singles like Time with Free Nationals and Kali Uchis, and That's Life with 88 Keys, released in 2019, were collaborations approved by the estate, offering glimpses of Mac Miller's versatility without overwhelming them. Additionally, the estate re-released fan-favorite mixtapes like Faces and Kids on streaming platforms, making his earlier work accessible while respecting its original form. These movements avoided the trap of flooding the market with unfinished demos or remixes. A common criticism of posthumous releases like the notorious Big's Born Again in 1999, which featured beats and features Biggie never approved. This restraint kept Mac Miller's legacy fresh and meaningful. Fans haven't been desensitized by oversaturation of content, and each release feels like an event. Whether it's the emotional weight of Circles, the nostalgic re-release of Faces, or the long-awaited arrival of Balloonerism, this pacing ensures that Mac Miller's music retains its emotional resonance, rather than becoming background noise in a sea of posthumous drops. Finally, the estate's transparency and engagement with fans has fostered trust and goodwill, crucial elements in preserving Mac Miller's legacy. From the outset, they communicated their intentions clearly. When announcing Circles, Mac Miller's family shared a note on his Instagram explaining that he was well into recording the album at the time of his death and that it was meant to complement Swimming. The openness set expectations and reassured fans that the release wasn't a cash grab but a labor of love. Similarly, Balloonerism's announcement acknowledged the album's history, its importance to Mac Miller, its unofficial circulation, and their dedication to present an official version, framing it as a fulfillment of his wishes rather than a unilateral decision. The estate has also used Mac Miller's legacy for a positive impact, channeling proceeds from like Balloonerism's short film screening into the Mac Miller Fund, which supports young art programs. This aligns with Miller's own values, community, creativity, and support for the next generation, further endearing the estate to fans. Compare this to the surrounding of some posthumous releases like XXXTentacion's, where fans and critics question the motives of his team, or the controversy over hologram tours, and the difference is super stark. Mac Miller's estate has built a relationship of trust, ensuring fans feel respected rather than exploited. Mac Miller's estate has been navigated through the treacherous waters of posthumous releases with grace and integrity, avoiding the stains that have marred other artists' legacies. By respecting his artistic vision, exercising restraint, and engaging fans transparently, they've ensured that each piece of music feels like a gift rather than a gimmick. Circles and Balloonerism stand as a testament to Mac Miller's genius, while re-releases and limited singles kept his spirit alive without overstaying their welcome. In an industry prone to commodifying the death, the estate's approach offers a blueprint. Prioritize the artist's intent, release sparingly, and honor their memory with purpose. As a result, Mac Miller's legacy not only endures but shines brighter, a rather triumph in the often murky world of posthumous music.